Once we've mastered the clean, now we're ready to add in some rotation. So until we've got that landing down, until we've got that landing with that hinge, we don't want to mess with any kind of rotation just because of all the powers of play. It's going to put more strain on not only your spine, but then it's not going to allow you to catch the bell in the right spot. So it's going to slam a little bit harder. We want to avoid all that. So once we got that down, now we're ready to play around with rotation. And the same way we've been progressing in that we're starting off with very small, subtle rotations, subtle changes, and then we can keep expanding and building on that. That's the same way we're going to do it here. Now, we've been doing the dead start clean. Here's a simple way to start adding some rotation into the dead start clean. So we're still not taking the hinge into play, or at least not into a powerful hip pop, hip snap, where that bell is going to fly out in front of us. We're going to keep everything vertically lined, and we're going to keep it close to the body. Same thing is we're going to do that right now with the dead start rotational clean. So what we're going to do is we're going to pivot on one foot. The way we're going to open up for that rotation is going to be through the pivot of that foot. Okay, so notice how without any weight, without anything, you can see how when I pivot, that's going to open up the rotation. This knee, we want to make sure we're not putting too much torque on this knee by externally rotating but not sliding that foot. So we're just going to rotate from the hip, from this leg, from this hip, into the other hip, and then drop down. So that's the only rotation that's going to happen. So as we come up, so rather than staying super sagittal where we're just folding, we're folding and rotating at the same time. So our spine, if you look at it in alignment, rather than just staying vertical, going up and down, we're going to stay vertical, but we're also going to add in that rotation, and that's going to take some of the put some of the strain on the erectors from different locations, from different directions, and it's going to force me to drive a little bit harder from that glute. So same way as when we were doing the rotational swing, just a little bit more power output had to come from one of the glutes. Same idea here. As we come down that contralateral side, so that opposite leg from the arm that's planted or from the arm that's loaded, that leg is going to have to drive a little bit harder. So you notice now where that momentum is going, where that transition is coming from. So rather than staying just from in that sagittal position, we're going to start to bring that bell across the body. Now that was an exaggerated demonstration of how you're going to bring it across. You're not going to bring it all the way across and catch it sideways. You're going to stay in line with your midline. Okay? So we'll start with the bell from that standing position. We're going to start with the bell in the left hand. We're going to pivot on the left foot and come down across the body. Okay, so that bell is going to be right in line with that right foot. This is what's going to give you the position that you're going to go in. So notice the position of where that kettlebell is in line on your feet. It's closer to one side. It's not right down the middle. This is going to give you that room to come down into and drive up from. So we're going to start from the ground. We're going to do dead start. So we're going to touch the ground between each rep. Hold it there for a second. So we're just going to do one rep at a time on this. And because there's those natural starting and end points, it kind of lends itself to doing one rep at a time versus swings or something a little bit more ballistic. All right, so from right here, keep my back straight. Notice we didn't break anywhere else. Spine is nice and engaged. Abs are nice and engaged. Shoulder is nice and engaged. Lats is engaged. All this is engaged. So even though I'm in this awkward position, I'm still going to be able to explode from that position because of that awareness that I've already been building into my program, into my movement patterns. It's still going to be there. So now as I come down, I'm going to explode up, catch that belt into that rack position. If you immediately felt like you had too much power, we can use that training wheel and revert back to that, but still add that rotation. So this foot is getting about 30% pressure, 70% pressure on that planted foot, driving up. Catch with that hand, come back down. If that felt good, you don't need that training wheel. So the way that we're going to intensify this is we're going to take the ground out of the equation, and we're just going to do that hang clean position. So as I come down, I'm going to come down to where it's just hovering over the ground, and I have to create that momentum from that position. I don't have that moment of rest. My erectors, my glutes, everything is firing the entire time. So I can't force, or I'm going to have to force it the entire time rather than coming onto the ground and then creating that momentum, creating that force to pull that bell up into place. So from this, now I'm going to stand with the bell. I'm going to pivot on this back foot, come down, drive it up. Same principles apply. I'm going to unravel and quickly drop with the bell, follow the bell so that way it doesn't jerk me out of place, and then back up. So from here, you can see how you can start adding some of these variables just by changing the foot position, that foot pattern, but still incorporating that same position. And we'll start to get to that a little bit more into flow, but I just want to introduce you to some of these concepts so that way you have that in mind as we continue to go through this. So let's do this again, and now I'm just going to show you, I'm going to change my foot position every single time, but nothing is going to change except that foot position. So from that standing position, I'm going to come down, I'm going to catch with a little bit of a step. I'm going to come down, I'm going to catch with a little bit of a step. So I'm moving each time and rotating into a little bit wider. And now you have a wide variety of motions and movement patterns that you can go through, but still ultimately doing the same movement. So it doesn't force you to have to try to come up with crazy combinations and movements and things that just don't really provide any real value. Now we're doing the clean, which is a strong, powerful movement that's going to help build a strong shoulder. It's going to help build a grip. It's going to help build your forearms. Now all we're adding is this one variable that's going to allow you to take that to new levels. All right, so once we've gotten that position, the next thing we're going to do is going to be a two-hand rotational clean. So it's not going to be rotation so much with a hinge. We're going to stay fairly upright. So similar to what we were doing with the cheek curl, where that bell stayed in line. We really didn't hinge too much with it. That bell is going to stay in the frontal plane. It's going to stay right in front of us. We're not going to hinge. We're not going to drop. We're only going to come from one side and catch at the other. So all this other hand is doing is providing a nice smooth pathway for this bell to come back and forth. Okay, so now we're starting to break out of that fold hinge clean into that rotation clean. So now we're pulling from the different angles. And this is something I'm going to touch on again in the programming, but think about it. In traditional movement patterns, you vertically push, you vertically pull, you horizontally push, you horizontally pull, and you can program this in and you can progress with those. But what about all those times, all those positions in between that we don't hit? Those rotational cleans, those rotational snatches, that's where kettlebells really fill in the gaps, and that's where I really like about these movements, that you're going to be able to supplement what you're currently doing to build strong, resilient shoulders, or you can incorporate solely to just kind of go through some plateaus you might be experiencing with traditional lifting. So now we're going to add some some rotational cleans with two hands. Okay, so keeping it all smooth. Everything you do, I want it to be so smooth. I want you to think about everything you're doing as intentionally and as smoothly as possible. So we'll start from that hang position. We're going to bring that bell up, and we're going to come back down the same way, right back up. So notice that's going to cross my body. I'm not going to rotate. I'm not going to let it break that plane. I'm still going to keep it in front of me, but I'm rotating that bell up, just providing enough of a downswing to build momentum. See how subtle that is. As I come down across, keeping the glutes engaged, I'm going to slightly, ever so slightly rotate my upper body, but just enough to clear my legs. But as I come across, where I'm pulling, where that force is coming from, it's the same movement pattern. So if I'm doing the clean in front and I'm getting that pull, if I'm doing the rotation, I'm getting that pull. If I'm doing it from the side, I'm getting that pull. So it's all doing the exact same thing, just from different directions. So as I pull up from the shoulder, from the lat, from the upper back, then finish that movement with the elbow, and then find the position of the kettlebell around my forearm. Not a second before that. Otherwise, it's just turning it into some kettlebell swinging cheek curl clean thing. And that just doesn't have a good ring to it. So we're going to bring it back up. We're going to come back to the side. So as I come around, I'm squeezing my glutes. Because that weight's in front of me, it is pulling. I want to make sure I keep my spine safe by increasing that tension in the glutes, increasing that tension throughout my erectors, throughout my front line. Keep everything nice and engaged. Once that feels good, now we can start adding in back and forth. We can start adding in that hand transition. So even though one hand's on top, as we cross, the hands are going to switch, and we're going to bring it up to the other side. Hands are going to switch, bring it up to the other side. So we're staying tight to the body. And this is just teaching me how to be nice and smooth through these ranges that I wasn't playing with before. Everything has been hinge and fold. Now, hinge slightly and let that bell rotate across. And I can accentuate that even more with a little bit more knee flexion, a little bit of a hinge. So notice how I can play around with this and still get the benefits of a rotational clean without aggravating my elbow, my forearm, my wrist, my shoulder by just using one hand. I get that support from the other hand. So once I've practiced that a few times, I feel pretty confident in that. Now we can start taking this hand away. And so what we'll do is similar to what we did with the cleans, we'll add this hand as a training wheel, but only to catch. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to unravel outside the body, come across, and then come back up into that rack. So the same way we did with the swing, across the body, getting that nice train tracks where the knees and toes stay in the same direction, opening up the hips, straightening one leg, keeping that core nice and engaged, keeping that spine nice and straight, even slight extension. Same idea, but now we're just catching that bell in the rack position. So we're taking that energy, we're driving from that glute, but keeping it tight. So we'll start from the same position. So I'm going to unravel quickly away from me. I'm not going to open up too much. I'm going to stay fairly square. As I unravel, I'm going to come across, and I'm going to use this hand to catch it, but notice how I'm going to slightly open up. While I'm slightly open up, my glutes are really engaged to make sure that I'm not straining my lower back, trying to torque myself into position. Come back down, back up. So now from here, I can play around with how low I go, how far out I come, but I want to try to stay as tight as possible and get a strong pull. So again, just as if that bell was in front of me, I'm getting that strong pull. That same thing applies when that bell's out to the side, getting that strong pull. Starting with the shoulder. So what I don't want to see is a curl. Come across and pull. Pull in position. Once I've got that, now we can start playing with a 360 clean, where the bell is going to start on one side and come around, catch on the other side. So what I want you to look at is the foot position as I'm doing this. So to start off, I'm going to keep my feet square, similar to how we were doing those twists, where I'm just focusing on that spine rotating. We're going to open up the hips, but we're not going to lift the feet. The feet are going to stay square. So we're taking one variable out of the equation so we can just focus on that rotational clean. So as I come up, I'm going to start in the rack position. I'm going to let it unravel across my body, straighten the arm out, bring it back up into position. So I'm going to keep my feet planted, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to unravel. Remember, unwind, unravel the bell. As it comes across, I'm going to use this swing right here, this momentum, to then generate the power that's going to allow me to clean the bell up into position. So this is going to allow me to strengthen up my shoulder from a different angle than if I'm just doing a traditional hinge and clean. I'm strengthening up more of my rear delt, more of my upper back as I come across the side. Getting a little bit of medial delt, but ultimately we're not working on this for single arm, single muscle pieces. We're trying to do this as one movement pattern that we're just trying to connect all the pieces. So as I come around, it's very important that we're not getting any kind of jerk. So we're not casting the bell out. We're letting the bell unravel. As it unravels, it's going to flow on the way down. Flow on the way down. As it comes around, now we'll be able to catch it. Okay, so we're still keeping it tight. The main way you know that you're ready to progress is that there's no slam and there's no jerk. So there's no jerk on the way down and there's no slam as you catch the bell. So once we practice that, now we're going to add in some pivoting. And this adds a powerful component because it adds a very athletic component. Because most of athletics, most of the things you do are going to be on your midfoot or the ball of your feet. You're rarely going to be flat-footed. Think about when you're a kid. On your toes, on your toes. I mean, I can still hear that in my head. Always being in that athletic stance, ready to pounce, ready to engage, ready to move. Same thing is going to apply here. We're going to be flat, but as we come around, we're going to be rotating and pivoting on the balls of your feet as you come around. So as the bell travels through one side, you're going to be pivoting. As it comes around, you're going to be using that other leg to pivot and drive to bring it up. So you add a little bit more power that's going to allow you to then replace or to add to this flow and start adding in some really cool things that you'll be able to piece together and build some really strong, powerful flows with some substantial weight, not just using something super, super light. So we're going to bring it up. We're going to do a 360. It's going to come around and we're going to pivot. So now we're just going to pivot again. We're getting a full rotation. So now we're adding more rotation. We're not staying as square. We're not staying as frontal plane. We're adding in that rotation where I'm catching it now in that transverse plane. So just think frontal plane, everything stays in front of you. Transverse now, it's going to rotate, it's going to come to the side. So we're playing around with that. Nice, smooth grip. We can alternate back and forth depending on how comfortable you feel with that position. But ultimately, this is just a great way to start incorporating all the pieces, the levels, the rotation, the power transfer, the fluidity, the tension. Start putting it all together. Once we've gone through that and you've mastered that and you feel just freaking confident with that, then we can practice one of my favorite movements, which is the 360 clean. And the 360 alternating clean is such a fun movement because it allows you to really get flowy. It really is going to build some incredible strength in your grip, your forearm, and in the everything connecting the bell to your body. So as long as we've mastered all these pieces, everything feels fluid, everything feels smooth, you're not feeling any kind of hitch in your elbow, in your shoulder, in your back, you feel great. Now we can start playing around with this. So what's going to look like is as we come around, we're going to keep that momentum going, keep that circle going, and then catch again. So it's going to require us to move and groove with this kettlebell, get out of the way, come back into play, but always stay nice and tight. Okay? I'm not meaning for all these things to rhyme. I don't know why it's happening that way. So we're going to go ahead and go from the rack position. Again, so we'll make it nice and simple at first. We're going to transfer into the other hand. Simple. We've been doing this one. Notice how we're pivoting, keeping nice and strong. That bell is pulled up, and then we're just finishing the movement with the other hand. Now what we're going to do is as that bell comes up, we're going to keep that momentum going with that hand so it comes up and over, and then wrap it back around. So as that bell comes around, we're going to up and over and wrap it back around. So notice, looks tricky. Doesn't feel tricky once you've broken it down like this. So notice how we have to position. And what I like about this is, again, going back to what makes these so powerful. It's that combination, that marriage of fluidity and tension that allows us to come around, move into play. So we're just creating some neural pathways here as we're watching the bell, as we're focusing on tension at different points. So as I'm letting that bell come around, I can't be fully tense, but what the counter muscle or the counterbalance to that is going to be stronger glutes, stronger external obliques. As that comes around, now I'm getting that power from my opposite side as I come into that rotational force, bring those rotational forces around. So as it comes around, you can see how everything has to move in unison very clearly. Otherwise, once you get that hitch, and you get stuck, you're not going to be able to keep going. So this is obviously a much more advanced movement, but I just want to show you what's possible with this because then again, what makes the kettlebell so powerful in my book is being able to incorporate this and do some really cool flows. So you can go into some flows, you can catch from different orientations, you can catch into different positions, different foot positions, and you can make one movement turn into a handful of movements, just changing a few variables. So give these a try, master each piece before you try the next one. Don't jump too soon, really practice it, try it out, and then once you feel comfortable, then you can step outside your comfort zone. So remember, it's not going leaps and bounds outside your comfort zone. You just want to go step by step by step till where you feel like you can go a little bit outside of that, and then all of a sudden you'll realize, oh my gosh, look how far I've come, and it's just because of all this practice that I put into play.